Hi there, my name is Greg Idden. I'm a senior manager in the product team here at Sophos, and today you and I are going to be demystifying zero trust. Trust is a dangerous word in IT, especially when that trust is implicit, when it's unqualified, when it's unquestioned. Creating a big, large, sealed-off corporate perimeter and then trusting everything that's inside of it, that's proven time and again to be a really flawed design. These soft, chewy centers, they're a hacker's dream. Once they get inside, they're often invisible. They can spread across the network, access important systems, and anything else. It's just trivial because the security controls and the strongest checks are only at the perimeter. Whether you like it or not, the perimeter has been eroded. Users want to work remotely now. They want to work on untrusted networks like a coffee shop's Wi-Fi. They want to use their own personal devices to access corporate data and resources. They're making use of SaaS applications, cloud platforms, and services. And all of this is leaving our data outside of the corporate perimeter. And all these public cloud platforms, that means many of the devices and the services that once ran within the corporate perimeter is now run from outside it. Everything is everywhere. Yet this old model fails to empower businesses to embrace things like the cloud while simultaneously protecting their data and protecting their users and protecting their customers. Enter zero trust. Zero trust, it's a holistic approach to security, and it's addressing all these threats and the changes in how businesses work. It's a model, but it's also a philosophy for how to think about cybersecurity and how to do cybersecurity. No one and no thing should be automatically trusted, be it inside or outside the corporate network, even the network itself. Because eventually, something needs to be trusted, but with zero trust, this trust is temporary, it's transient, and it's established from multiple sources of data, more than we've ever used in the past, and it's constantly being reevaluated. We've actually got a lot of experience with untrusted networks like this. Ever heard of the internet? Computers that are facing the public internet are secured in a completely different manner to those that are inside the traditional perimeter. The zero trust model guides us to treat all devices as if they were internet facing, and instead of having one single perimeter around them, we create many micro-perimeters or micro-segments, applying checks and controls around everything and between everything. And let's be honest, no one vendor, no one product, no one technology is going to get you to zero trust. Zero trust requires a lot of different solutions to cover the wide range of assets and resources that typical modern businesses make use of. Zero trust is a big idea. There's a lot of evolving discussion around it, but at its essence, there's a few major concepts for zero trust that you should keep in mind along your journey. First, there is no inside the network. Pretend you're running your entire business from an untrusted location like Starbucks and all your devices are just connected directly to the most dangerous of all networks, the public internet. By imagining this as our reality, we're forced to apply security in ways where we can't rely on being behind a traditional corporate perimeter. There will always be corporate trusted networks for administration and in-house systems, but the goal is to keep ordinary users off of those networks, using application proxies and other technologies to secure them, and this drastically reduces our attack surface. Next, trust nothing and verify everything. Assume there are attackers both on the inside of your network and on the outside of your network, and they're there all the time, constantly trying to attack. No user, no device should just be automatically trusted. And by imagining that we're under constant attack from every direction, we're pushed to build rock-solid authentication and authorization into our resources. We've got to layer our defense. We've got to add constant monitoring and analytics to keep an eye on everything that's happening. Finally, security should adapt in real time. The security policies we put in place to achieve zero trust, they should be dynamic and automatically change based on insight from as many different sources of data as possible, from as many different technologies as possible. A static policy like this user on this device can access this thing, that's not going to keep you safe if that device has been compromised while that user is on it. Quite a common scenario. If our policy took into account things like the device's health, such as maybe identifying any potential malicious behaviors, our policy could use this to dynamically adapt to the situation with zero effort from an admin. And actually, This is part of the Sophos strategy for quite a long time. You might know it as synchronized security, where our products can share their unique insights that they have with one another. This enables us to have adaptive, dynamic policies, taking advantage of all these insights so that a policy is never static and never easily circumnavigated. Look, much of this is just good security policy and best practices, which you're probably already doing. And if you've prepared for GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation in the European Union, you've probably done a lot of this already. Now, we've already covered our first concept in Zero Trust, that there is no inside the network, so let's dive into our next concept. Trust nothing ever, for if you trust nothing, you are forced to seek relevant security measures wherever there is any kind of risk. Verify everything? Do not assume that passing a check naturally affords something some trust. Having credentials, having a username and password doesn't mean you are trustable, it just means you've got hold of a username and password. So we're going to break this into 4 simple principles to help you keep this all in mind. Always identify. You need a singular authoritative source of identity, and you need to use that everywhere with things like single sign-on. Everything then should be authenticated, but also with multi-factor authentication. So no matter where the user is, whatever they're trying to access, you validate their credentials, you validate they have their second or maybe even a third factor, and you regularly require re-authentication. If credentials are stolen or a system is hijacked, multi-factor authentication and regularly requiring re-authentication will quickly put a stop to an attack. Always control. Apply controls and checks wherever they're needed, and then adopt and enforce the principle of least privilege. So, to give this a quick example, users should only have access to the bare minimum that they need to perform their job. If there's a HR system only used by German members of staff due to German government regulations perhaps, then only the German staff should have access to that system, no one else. Always analyze. Just because an authentication was successful or access is granted to a user or device, that doesn't mean that they're trustable. Insider threats, malicious actors, they may gain access to valid usernames and passwords, valid credentials. Record all the network and system activity and then regularly analyze and inspect it to verify what's happening after authentication. SIEMs, security information and event management tools, EDR, endpoint detection and response, and even things like MTR, managed threat response, these things have emerged to solve and serve this exact need. And finally, always secure. You need to use an inside-out approach to cybersecurity. You should be focusing on your most important asset, your data, and working your way outwards, identifying points of vulnerability along your data's journey within your network from the moment it is created until the moment it is destroyed. You need to always consider risk above absolutely everything else, not compliance, not regulations. Applying security purely to meet some kind of compliance check or a regulation requirement is actually very dangerous. Compliances, they've got no idea what's inside your network, the flows, the workloads, the systems and technologies you're using. They don't know the risks that are relevant to each and every possible element of your network. By considering risk and then modeling the threats your organization faces, that's going to ensure you know where security needs to be increased, where you might be able to relax it, and where you might need to do some micro-segmentation and creating some additional perimeters and where they should go. Now, I've used the term micro-segmentation a few times, so let's try and explain what it is. I'm going to actually use micro-segmentation and micro-perimeters, segments. I'm going to use those interchangeably throughout this presentation because they're effectively the same thing. Segmentation, it's breaking something larger, like a big network. You're breaking it up into smaller pieces. And doing so, it enables us to create perimeters around every workload, around every device, every user, every application, every data store, every network segment. Not every user needs access to every server or every database. Is there this HR system that's only used in Germany? The American users don't need access to it. You could maybe segment that off into a separate network that's only for German members of staff, and if you've not got a German identity, you can't access that network. Microsegments can come in many different forms. They can be network segments like we've just described. They could be different subnets that only specific authenticated users can reach. They could be groupings of users for access control. They could be endpoint and firewall solutions that isolate machines when threats are detected. They could be application proxies for web apps so that each app is protected against exploits, or for authentication so only relevant users can access those apps. There could be databases located on a dedicated network segment where only the server that needs to communicate with it can actually reach that network segment. Look, you might only control one or two of these perimeters at any given time. You need to be comfortable with that, but what's really important is that we move away from all things on one network and a single perimeter surrounding everything. Because castles and moats may have worked in the past, but in the digital age, it is way too easy to cross a single moat. Everyone's pretty excited about Zero Trust because Zero Trust brings about a lot of benefits. Now, I can't talk to all of these that are on the screen, but let's just focus on the ones in orange. So with Zero Trust, we're able to control our entire estate from inside the office all the way to the cloud platforms we use. No lack of control outside the corporate perimeters and struggles with remote users. With Zero Trust, we're able to still maintain security even if we don't actually own and have full control over the infrastructure that's in use. By using identity, location, device health, multi-factor authentication, and overlaying monitoring and analytics, we're able to have a strong sense of security across any kind of environment, any kind of platform, or any kind of service. With Zero Trust, we no longer see things as inside or outside the corporate perimeter. We're able to manage and secure both remote users and internal office users in exactly the same way. Our remote users no longer need to feel like they're being limited or treated like second-class citizens. And even BYOD, bring your own device, that can actually be made safe. That could be a completely secure and sound strategy to implement. And with Zero Trust, the ability for malware or attackers to spread within a network is drastically reduced. Rather than having free reign of your entire network once they get inside, maybe you've only got one subnet and everything's on it, including your servers, they're only going to have access to the bare minimum systems that the compromised user had access to. And by continuing to distrust the authenticated user, you're putting checks in place between all the different systems, so if they try and spread, you're actually looking and you're monitoring and you're checking whether these are valid connections. So, Zero Trust sounds amazing, but how do we move towards it and take advantage of all those benefits? First, you need to define what surface you're hoping to secure, what you're looking to control, what you're looking to monitor. What are all the different resources, all the different services and apps and devices and so on that are in use in your business? Having a really clear scope of everything that's in use across your entire network, that's going to then help us to seek and apply all our new Zero Trust mentality to it. So, once we've then got everything scoped out, we found all the devices and servers and what different things we have that we need to secure, we then need to map what's known as standard pathways, which are the flows, the behaviors, the relationships between everything that are standard and expected of typical average use. This group of users accessing that app, this device connects to those networks, this service uses those databases, and so on. But then there's privileged pathways. The admin might want to connect to the management console, might want to RDP onto that server that hosts sensitive data, and so on. Privileged pathways will almost certainly want extra security and extra controls applied to them. Okay, so now we've found our scope, we've got all the relationships between everything, we can then start to apply our Zero Trust philosophy to it, identify which security measures and access controls we want to apply and where we want to put them, what technology will best mitigate which risk, and so on. Next, we need to implement Zero Trust policies that will make use of as many different sources of data as possible to add context and color to any connection or request. With Sophos Synchronized Security, this is actually pretty much out of the box, and it's part of our philosophy for how we develop our own security technologies and services. However, you might be using other products that need policies architected in special ways to adhere to our new Zero Trust way of doing things. All right, we've got our policies in place, so finally, and perhaps most importantly, we need to overlay everything with really detailed monitoring so that we can maintain our newly created perimeters. I mean, what's the point in them if we're not keeping an eye on them and seeing when they might be breached? This is pretty much the biggest challenge any admin faces. where once you could install antivirus and just configure it and leave it alone and never access the console again, with Zero Trust, we actually have to change our habits. We need to be monitoring the events that are taking place. We need to take advantage of tools like EDR to understand the root cause of how threats are getting inside our environments. We need to understand what events actually are taking place before detections and maybe after potential breaches. Thankfully, services like our MTR, our Managed Threat Response, this actually really helps here because it enables our experts to assist people with monitoring their networks and crushing threats on their behalf, meaning that you have that oversight and monitoring, but done by experts who are more capable, but also more trained and more well-versed in monitoring networks in this way. Because let's face it, this is a new area of responsibility for a lot of admins, and it's going to take some time for people to upskill themselves, to become comfortable and capable of doing these kind of activities. To try and show you what these steps are going to entail, I've just mapped a few resources on the screen, the things that we might want to secure with Zero Trust. So when we map out the standard and privilege pathways between all these resources, you start to understand how they connect to each other and which ones are vitally important to lock down. Now that we've got our pathways in place, we need to overlay this with automation and orchestration. These are the kind of tools that help us automate workflows and achieve the adaptive and dynamic policies that we require for Zero Trust. But we also need to overlay visibility and analytics so that we can just get a picture, a really big picture of what's going on, and identify potential threats, potential incidents, and then quickly and efficiently respond to them. Okay, I've just removed all the product icons and all the names just to help point out two things: perimeters and pathways. These perimeters around resources and the pathways between them, this is where we apply our security and controls to achieve a Zero Trust network. This is perhaps the hardest part of Zero Trust, identifying which technology or service or solution best mitigates each risk you have, and what's going to provide the best perimeter defense for that resource or the best pathway control and monitoring for it. As I mentioned earlier, no one single vendor or product or technology is going to let you achieve Zero Trust automatically. You're going to need a lot of different technologies, and orchestrating all that is no easy feat. While we can't sell you Zero Trust as just a singular solution, Zero Trust in a box, we do have a wide portfolio of security technologies and controls that will accelerate and simplify most organizations' journeys to Zero Trust. Sophos Central is our cloud-based cybersecurity platform, and it puts all these disparate and complementary technologies into a single hub to give you the high-level overview you need to orchestrate and monitor your Zero Trust network. Zero Trust and our vision for cybersecurity, synchronized security, share many of the same goals and actually complement each other quite well. Synchronized security, cybersecurity as a system that continuously analyzes, adapts, and automates the most complex tasks in IT, dynamically monitoring all system activity, user behavior, network traffic, and compliance postures in real time. All technologies, they share information between each other, providing insight and visibility to one another, where one alone would be completely blind. Tech, it should talk. Only through technology talking to each other can we achieve the adaptive and dynamic policies we need based on as many different sources of data to achieve a Zero Trust network. Let's zoom in on a few resources that we might have and just map a couple of controls to them as an example, using Sophos products, of course, because, I know those best. The XG firewall, for instance, we could use that to create segments or micro-perimeters around our users, around our devices and our apps and our networks and so on. We can have them as physical devices, but they can also be virtualized. Dynamic policies are actually at the center of the XG firewall, with multiple sources of data available to you to leverage as part of a policy. Identity, time of day, network location, device health, network packet analysis, and more. All these different sources of data can be used in different combinations depending on the scenario that you're trying to secure. Let's take server protection and InterceptX. We can use those to assign a device health status to every device that we have. So in the event one is compromised, the device can automatically be isolated, as well as blocking network connections between the device to limit the fallout of a breach, or the spread of maybe some malware or lateral movement of an attacker. And finally, some other technologies we could map to our resources. Things like Sophos Mobile, our UEM, Unified Endpoint Management Solution, could be used to support BYOD, bring your own device, or managing all kinds of mobiles, laptops, and desktops. We could then create compliance policies and put those in place to ensure a strong baseline configuration that we want of any device. And if any of those devices drift, they don't comply with our baseline configuration, well, that device can have its access revoked to other network resources, maybe apps or Wi-Fi access points, etc. As I said, it's going to take a lot of technologies to secure all the resources and all the assets that you have on a network. As I said, and I'm going to say it again, there is no one single vendor or product or technology that will solve all your zero trust requirements and problems. But Sophos, we certainly have a very large range of technologies that can help any organization along their journey. A zero trust technology stack, it needs to address two major areas: the management of zero trust and the security and control of your various resources and assets. Management is broken into three sub-areas: automation and orchestration. This is for defining dynamic policies, coordinating all our different technologies and putting everything into place. There's visibility and analytics. This is for maintaining oversight of our network and ensuring that everything's working, but also for identifying threats and breaches if or when they occur. It's perhaps more when than anything. And then we also need APIs because we sometimes need to integrate various technologies together, getting data out of one system and into another. Let's face it, there's no one product to fit all needs. So having APIs gives you the flexibility to use multiple different solutions and connect them together and make them work harmoniously. Thankfully, Sophos Central, it's got you covered for all three of these. Our cloud-native cybersecurity platform, it orchestrates all of our technologies in a single console. It provides you with the oversight of all of these technologies in a single place, behind a single pane of glass. And the APIs, we've got those to wire together any other third-party technologies you're using. Underneath the synchronized security icon, you're going to see the word SIEM, Security Information Event Management. You're going to probably need one of these to aggregate all the logging from all your non-Sophos products and your Sophos products and merge them all together so you have full oversight of everything that's going on. Thankfully, our APIs for Sophos Central make it super easy to get information out of Sophos Central and into whatever SIEM that you're using. The second area that we need in a zero trust technology stack, our resources and assets, they're broken into 5 sub-areas. People, the users, the admins, etc., who work for or with our businesses. Data, this is the lifeblood of all organizations and perhaps the most important asset to secure. We have devices, the servers, the laptops, the virtual machines, all that kind of stuff that we use to conduct our business. The workloads, these are the services and the apps that we use to process data, perform calculations, generate reports, etc. And last, networks, the communication channels over which data flows, web, email, Wi-Fi, the internet, and so on. Look, I'm not going to go into the weeds here because there's a lot of stuff going on this slide. There's a lot of different technologies, and each one is a whole conversation in itself. But as you can see, many of our products will help you secure multiple resources and assets at the same time. But by no means does this mean that you just need one technology and you can move on. Securing people, for instance, requires a large number of technologies to secure it and to have a resilient zero-trust architected network. It's also important to note that Sophos doesn't cover all the areas that you need for zero trust. 2 important areas are identity access management, IAM, and single sign-on, which you've probably already got in place. We are not an identity provider, but identity plays a big part in zero trust and a big part in synchronized security. We leverage identity across all our solutions. So that you can empower your users to use cloud services wherever they are, you want a strong IAM solution with single sign-on in place to make use of your single authoritative source of identity and use that across all systems and all services as part of zero trust. This way, one set of credentials are used to access all systems, and you've always got multi-factor authentication in place. This means you don't have different qualities of passwords everywhere, and your users having weak passwords because they have to have different passwords for all these different systems. Okay, so if you remember nothing else from this presentation, what I want you to remember, Zero Trust in a nutshell, is that there is no inside your network anymore, secure accordingly. You need to trust absolutely nothing and verify everything. And your security now needs to start adapting in real time. So that's, my friends, hopefully demystifies Zero Trust, and that is Zero Trust in a nutshell. My name is Greg Idden. It's been a real pleasure. Thanks, and enjoy your day.